שלום, אני טלי אשר, ואתם על מי רוצה נס, פודקאסט שנועד להכיר לכם מקרוב את החיים לצד התמודדות נפשית. לא תשמעו כאן נתונים סטטיסטיים, לא נחכה לשערורייה תקשורתית שתעלה את הנושא לכותרות ליומיים שלושה. אנחנו כאן באופן קבוע, נכנסים ליומיום, לחדרי חדרים, ובעיקר לחדרי הלב. שלום, אנחנו בפרק נוסף של מי רוצה נס, פרק מספר 16, והפעם משהו מיוחד. הקלטנו את הפרק ביוטה, ארצות הברית, במרכז טיפולי שנקרא Sunrise RTC. מרכז טיפולי שכל כולו מבוסס על השיטה DBT, טיפול דיאלקטי התנהגותי, שכבר הקדשנו לה פרק או שניים בפודקאסט הזה. למעשה כל המרכז הטיפולי מבוסס DBT, גם הצוות המטפל, גם המנטורים, גם בית הספר שמסופח למקום, ואפילו הטבחית. כל ההתנהלות שם מבוססת DBT, זה משהו שלא קיים בארץ, ואני חושבת שיהיה לכם מעניין להקשיב. מאחר שהשיחה מתנהלת באנגלית, יש לכם שתי אפשרויות. או להמשיך כפי שאתם עכשיו מאזינים לגרסת האודיו של הפרק, או לעבור לגרסת הוידאו, ואז יהיו לכם גם כתוביות בעברית. כדי להגיע אליה אתם נכנסים לאתר שלי italiasher.com, בבלוג של הפודקאסט בפרק 16 יש לכם לינק לוידאו, ושם תוכלו ללחוץ על הכפתור CC ויהיו לכם כתוביות בעברית. אני מקווה שיהיה לכם מלמד, שתהנו, וניפגש בפרק הבא.
You can start.
Okay, so I would like you to present yourself. Craig, can we start with you?
Yeah. So my name is Craig Simpson. I am the Senior Clinical Director here at Sunrise Residential Treatment Center, and I have been here for 7 years.
Okay, and Ivory.
I'm Ivory Behunin. I'm a therapist here at Sunrise. I've been here for 5.5 years.
And Amanda.
Yeah, I'm Amanda McNatt. I'm the executive director for Sunrise, and I've been here for about 9 years as well.
Wow. So thank you for being here. I really feel privileged. And we are here now in Sunrise, in Sunrise campus. So can you tell us what is Sunrise? Amanda, can you please?
So Sunrise is a residential treatment center for teenage girls. So we primarily work with teenage girls from the ages of 13 to 17 with all kinds of different, issues, mainly depression, anxiety, trauma, a lot of emotion dysregulation, and just highly sensitive kids that don't know how to kind of experience and manage their emotions. Mm-hmm. We are a long-term program, so by the time our families get to us, they've oftentimes been through lots of other kind of steps to kind of understand what's going on with their child, but also to understand what kind of level of care they need. And so we're really the last stop.
When you say long-term.
Yeah, so we're about 10 to 12 months is our average length of stay. So, we have typically if you're having an issue, you'll go find an outpatient therapist. The behaviors might need more care. You might go to an intensive outpatient program or, a day treatment type of thing. The next step is really short-term program, which is 30 to 60 days. And so we're really, if those kind of levels of care don't treat what's happening, long-term care is really what's needed.
Yeah. So if a family decides to come to Sunrise, it's after many other options they try to help their daughter.
Yeah.
So it's only for girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said until the age of 17, maybe even a bit longer?
So when they come to our program, they need to be 17. They can turn 18 while in the program and stay in the program.
They wouldn't start at 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we really are working with that population that's in high school, they're not quite maybe finished with their education or ready for kind of college level. And so we do a lot of support to help students transition into, independent living as well. But coming into Sunrise, they have to be 17.
Yeah. So it's a very, very special place, as I know. And Ivory, can you tell us about DBT which is actually Sunrise is based on DBT. Can you tell us a couple of words about it?
Yeah, so DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy, and it was created by Marsha Linehan, who had a lot of personal experiences with her own mental health and found that a lot of treatments just weren't effective for the population that had more tendencies to be suicidal or to self-harm, or some of these behaviors that just were more difficult for providers to treat.
So other methods didn't really...
like the cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, just wasn't as effective. And so she worked really hard to take a lot of concepts from cognitive behavioral therapy or other types of therapy and then mixed it with Eastern philosophies, so of mindfulness and meditation. So she put it together really well in a way that was, I feel like, more easily digestible for that population. And so at Sunrise, we work with the adolescent. They've taken the adult skills and then kind of packaged it out for adolescents. So
there are some changes according to the fact that you deal with adolescents?
So it's just more simplified skills versus what somebody going through the adult DBT program would be using. Okay. And so it's how do you manage really difficult emotions when they arise? How do you do that preemptively versus being in time of crisis? How do you learn to see other people's perspectives? How do you hold to your own values?
Values, for example.
Yeah. So how, honesty could be a value. How do I practice that in the world? And a lot of our students really struggle with peer pressure and wanting maybe to people please. And so it's how do I say, you know what, I'm really not okay with doing this behavior and while still trying to maintain the friendship.
So to be faithful to myself, but yet to reconnect and to be maybe socialized with other people.
Right. And then the biggest one is mindfulness. So how do you be in the present moment without judgment, not thinking about what's happened in the past, not being worried about what's going to happen in the future, but just being here and
stay in the moment.
Right. And that's huge. And it really helps our students to get more grounded and then to be better able to practice all the other skills that we teach.
Yeah. Thank you. And Craig, can you please tell us, what does it mean that the whole place, all the employees, all the aspects of Sunrise daily life is based on DBT?
Really that it's our common language that everybody's trained in. And so mentors are able to provide coaching to the girls in the moment when they need it, when things arise. They're able to kind of help them identify and walk through a behavioral chain of kind of how did I end up in the situation that I'm in and what led to this. And so what kind of thoughts, feelings, etc. kind of led to where I'm at and what could I do different next time? Or then how do I make amends and how do I repair with the people that I need to in order to be able to continue to maintain a relationship with them? And so it really is just based in that everybody receives training, everybody receives that coaching themselves and how to kind of live and do DBT. And it's something we're always striving to do is just embody it more and learn it more and live it more. And it's really complex, but it's skills that everybody needs, and it's skills
like
that everybody
can also modeling to the students, right? Okay.
So being able to say like I messed up and I do things, and that's what DBT is very good at, is leveling the playing field. And it's not about that I'm here to fix you or change you. Well, I'm here to help you. I'm here to coach you, and I have to live by these things myself too. And I can mess up therapy just as much as anybody else can by the things that I choose to do or choose not to do sometimes.
So it makes me want to ask you all how does it affect your personal life or your daily life to work here and, as you said, to speak the language of DBT? So do you feel that you practice it? Do you feel that it's like it affects your daily life, or even does it design your personality?
Amanda, I can take it. I would 1000% yes. I think that Sunrise it's hard to really provide the level of support and care for our type of students we work with if we're not doing our own work ourselves. And so my own process and my time at Sunrise is really having to, understand what comes up for me when I'm working with a specific student or, a specific issue, and then kind of force me to really look at myself.
Yeah.
And I have to do things to keep myself grounded so I can come into work and be the best support for the students, right? If I'm dysregulated coming into this environment, I'm not going to really be able to support the students. So my own experience has been my increase in just self-care. I've discovered yoga. Everyone hears about this all the time, but that's really my place to practice mindfulness and meditation.
To reflect and to be connected.
Yeah, and to be present and drop into myself. And that has been incredibly powerful in my personal life. I have my own kids and my own stresses, and I feel like, okay, I can come into even just a work issue or a system where I'm actually really encouraged to slow down and to practice mindfulness and self-care. And I think it helps me obviously personally, but also professionally, which in the mental health field, I think is really tough to find in general. People that actually really practice taking care of themselves.
Yeah. I agree. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's impacted my personal life. This is the first program that I've been to that I worked at that's fully integrated DBT. And one of the things that makes a program DBT is that they have DBT consultation for the therapist, which is therapy for the therapist. Yeah. And even yesterday,
supervision?
Kind of. It's more we all sit together and we set an agenda. Okay, who needs to talk about either, a difficult client and get some help with that case, or just needs validation or just support on either aspects of the job or personal life. It can be either. We take turns being group leader and different roles that we have. But one of the things we just barely added I wasn't here last week, but this week was in what ways are you using the DBT skills in your own life?
Yeah, exactly.
I really love that question because I really do try to practice these in my own life. And it was cool to just think about, okay, my last week, which was my week of vacation, how was I able to even practice them? With my family members I was with, or, with my husband, sometimes I'll teach him skills, but I don't say I'm teaching you a DBT skill right now, right? It's we talk about a concept, and it's cool to see how I've been married just over 6 years now, and how he has learned these skills without the names attached to them.
Great. And what do you think, Craig? How does it affect you?
It comes into play in a lot of different ways, and they both have mentioned a lot of ways, but just in how I deal with my wife, and how I deal with my kids, and how I deal with myself. And that's been some of the biggest things for me, is just learning to slow down, learning to kind of tune in and be mindful. And there's more I was going to say, but I forgot.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah.
Like a situation that you would practice DBT and it will help you to overcome something.
Yeah, so really the biggest one that is hard, and I won't say that I'm perfect at it, is validation. Yeah. But it serves me better than anything else I've ever learned in helping kind of my relationship with my wife and my relationship with my children. And just knowing that I need to just listen and pay attention to what they're trying to say, and I don't need to problem solve. I don't need to give them the answers. I don't even have to fix it. But if I can just let her know that I know what she's going through and that I understand how intense it is for her right now, that takes all the intensity out of it for both of us. And then we are able to move on. Or even just a sort of story example is just I was at my parents' house and one of my nephews was there and his mom had left and he was younger, but he's staring out the window and he didn't want to say goodbye and he didn't want to move on to anything else. And we were going to go do fun stuff. His dad was still there. And his dad had tried all these ways to try to get him to move on. And then I just went over and said, "You're sad your mom left, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "And you wish you could be with her, huh?" He's like, "Yeah." And then 30 seconds later, he was ready to go. I think we were going to like...
This is what he needed.
It just to know that somebody understood and that what he's feeling was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I somehow get the impression that validation is a key component in DBT.
Yeah.
Like that, various things, but I keep thinking that validation is one of the most maybe essential.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sorry.
Yeah, I can say it again.
I think so. It's one of the skills that I think it's, besides mindfulness, it's a skill that's taught twice. So it's in Walk the Middle Path, we go over validation and self-validation. And then when we get to interpersonal effectiveness skills, it's in the give skill. It's the V of is validation. So I think it's so important they teach it twice. Yeah.
And not just validating others, but validating ourselves and what we're feeling. And that's what I see a lot of our students struggle with, is like really being able to validate their own experience. Their emotions are so intense that, you know, they've been invalidated a lot in their environment. And how many times, I mean, I've done this with my own kids where I'm like, why are you crying about this? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
We do it so
Nothing
we
happened.
don't. Yeah.
In Hebrew, this is what they say.
We mean no harm, right? But we're also, it's also kind of, they're having to learn how to trust their feelings.
Yeah.
Because they really haven't been able to. So even just trusting my own thoughts, my own feelings, and validating that, and being able to express that's a skill within itself.
I understand that the girls that come here struggle with, as you said, depression, anxiety, maybe they challenge borderline personality disorder or post-trauma. What would you say to parents whom their daughters deal with such kind of challenges and maybe hesitate whether to come here or not? What would you like to tell them? What should they know?
Well, I think in working with parents, I would just first let them know, like, you haven't done anything wrong. Like, as a parent, we're always blaming ourselves and feel guilty about things our kids are struggling with. And I've seen families that, you know, in all accounts, they're pretty effective, functioning people, and they have a child that really struggles. And there's nothing they've directly done, right? And then on the other hand, you have families that are more dysfunctional, and you can kind of see where some of the issues stem from, but you have both ends of the spectrum. So I think just like, don't blame yourself for your child's like challenges, and be willing to look at yourself at the same time, right? What can you do different or more effectively? Yes, and really you have to be part of the change as well, and be willing to be part of the change, and be willing to look at yourself. So it's a dialectic, right? It really is. It's like, how do you still validate, like, you're okay, you didn't, you know, necessarily do anything wrong, but also look at what you could do different.
Yeah. You didn't cause it, right? You didn't make it, but in aim to make it better, you have to be in it, in the process. Yeah. Did you want to say something else?
The word I think of when you say that is like being effective, right? Like that's a big word that we use in DBT.
Yeah.
It's not right, it's not wrong, but is it effective?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think for those families that are, you know, thinking, do we intervene, not intervene? And I have, you know, my own family members, my sisters who have been to that point. They have teenagers and they've been there. I would say, don't hesitate to act, because you have such a limited time with your teenagers, right? And once they turn 18, you have less opportunities to intervene. Yeah. So I would say intervene early, rather than like postponing
Don't wait.
it. Yeah, and that's what I've seen, like with my own family members. Like, earlier intervention would have been more helpful. Yeah.
Did you want to say something about that?
I mean, I echo a lot of what you guys have said already, but just that there is hope, and that you can do this, and that there's a way, and that it's awesome that there's a method to do this, and we're able to provide it, and lots of people have spent lots of time trying to figure this out and trying to like look into it, and there's lots of research, there's all that kind of stuff that's really there to help you, And you probably have caused problems, and you probably have, like, that's the easy part. It's like everybody messes up, everybody causes hurt. Like, that's what relationships are.
Yeah.
If they were just pleasant all the time, then that would be awesome. But we do hurt each other, and we do make mistakes. And the whole point is that there's a way back, and that there are things that you can do to repair and make it better. And to stay kind of stuck in blame or that kind of stuff, that's where you cause more damage than anything.
And it's not effective, as you said. Yeah. And when parents do come here and you meet them, what do they tell you? What is the story they come with?
You know, I think my mind just goes to like the hopelessness. I don't know that there's necessarily a main complaint, but just feeling hopeless. Like, is it ever going to get better? Is it ever going to change?
Because they did so many things and then sort of didn't work.
Yeah. And just feeling like I want my daughter back.
Yeah.
And how do I get her back? But feeling scared and unsure. Yeah.
So I hear the feeling that they lost their daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the person that we have living in our house is like a stranger.
Yeah.
And a common phrase I'll hear parents say towards the end of treatment is like you've given me my daughter back.
Yeah.
Like, I can see her again.
Yeah.
I think also like some common patterns that I see show up is like pretty regular childhood. And then usually about age like 11, 12, 13 is when lots of the problems start showing up.
Yeah.
That's just like a common age that fits with like
something starts like
right,
a dissonance.
A lot of developmental theories. It fits like age 11, 12 right in there, and then a lot of times parents think, oh, it's just going to get better, right? But then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time someone comes to Sunrise, it's been typically years of dealing with whatever the issue is that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I think where there's a lot of hopelessness that comes in when parents first come in here.
Yeah. And as you were talking before about the blame, don't feel you're guilty at anything. Is it something that parents tell you that they got from the environment, like a reflection of you must have done something wrong or hostility or something like that? Do you hear it, that things that they tried before, this was the message that was pointed to them?
Unfortunately, sometimes I would say yes, is that parents have heard that message from providers before or from just different people, of like even their peers. Like as a parent, like your peers are like, well, my kids, like, we just do this, and like you just need to take away everything and leave them a mattress in their room, and then they'll listen to you, or and then it will go well. Yeah, or you need to love them more, or and they're really just stuck in this place of they've tried a lot of things, they've done everything they can, and so they're just tired, and they are hopeless, and they're sad, and there's a lot of grief. And
I think, even unfortunately, just people in general have this like, oh, if your kid's struggling, it's the parent's fault.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people ask what I do for a living and I explain, I work at this, this residential treatment center, kind of explain it, then they say, oh, probably it's like the parent's fault, basically. It's the parents are, the ones to blame kind of thing. And it's like, no, this is a way more complex thing that I'm not going to spend the time. So I just said, no, that's not it. It's a bigger thing than that. And one thing I've really found is looking at generations back. So if you really want to understand an individual, you have to go at least 2 generations back, right? Yeah. And a lot of times our students are coming in with this generational trauma. That it's not just their parents, right, stuff, but grandparents are further back. And I've worked with a lot of families that have had people who were in the Holocaust, for example, like a couple generations back. We've had a lot of Jewish families at Sunrise, and it's, you can't discount the impact that's had on the generations, right? And so that's what I always like to, get a broader lens to have a better understanding for the individual in front of you.
Yeah, it's interesting. The family history regarding the collective history. So not only the parents feel grief or the loss of their daughter, they're sort of lonely in their environment, either from caregivers or from their social environment. I guess that here there is such maybe a kind of community for the parents because they meet each other. Is it one of the goals of Sunrise?
Yeah, I think we really approach treatment as not only for the student, but for the whole family system.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult for a lot of our families to find people that understand. And that goes back to the validation.
It's hard to explain to someone who doesn't go through this experience.
Yes. And so it's incredibly validating to talk with other parents who are in this exact place with you.
Yeah.
And so being able to provide parent support and education and coaching is a huge part of the program because we're asking you to change along with the student, right? It's not one or the other. It's like that's really what's going to lead to long-term success is if the whole system shifts. And to facilitate that change, right? And to make it lasting. And so, a huge part is just having parents that can support each other and help each other through it. And you have the coolest thing. I love going to like parent support groups because you have parents just coming into the program. You have parents that are getting closer to leaving. You'll even have parents that are already transitioned out of Sunrise.
Yeah.
And they really have a lot of wisdom to offer each other.
And you can see the process. You can see your future, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just, it comes back to just having hope, right?
Yeah.
Like a parent, oh my gosh, I had that exact same phone call or I had that exact same letter, that exact same situation, and this is where we are now. And it's tangible and real. It's not just some other story or it's at the actual
you can see it.
Place your kid is at, right? So that's huge.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of my favorite things is when we have our family event, which is 3 days where families actually come to our campus.
Like each 3 months or something like that?
Yeah, so once a quarter. And they, at first, everyone's like a little shy and hesitant, like, how does this work? And then you can see after the spending several days together, and then you hear like, we exchanged information with this person.
Yeah.
And sometimes the same thing, it's harder, but still possible over like a Zoom. We'll have groups and things. And I'll encourage them, like, put your information in the chat box if you want to keep in contact with people because...
To exchange knowledge.
Right. Because I'm always there to support families, but it's just such a different perspective of like someone going through a really similar, almost the same experience as you at the same time, and just being able to be there to support each other.
Yeah, sounds very, very important.
Yeah, so huge.
How can you tell what are the chances of a student to rehabilitate her life or to go back to her to the life she had before? I guess sometimes maybe the family dynamics or maybe the social environment can be like a trigger for certain, experiences or bad memories or things that the student used to do and maybe shouldn't go back to them. So how can you tell when someone has like good chances to build a new life or a life worth living, is the term which is used here?
Yeah.
Craig.
That's a big question. I'll start. Maybe Craig can talk more about this. But there's a couple ways we really look at, how do we say a student is successfully completing the program, right? Yeah. And how is building her life worth living, and will move on to life without really engaging in life interfering behaviors, right? We know a lapse or relapse is really kind of part of the process, but to again avoid maybe the unrelenting crisis that we were in that got us to Sunrise. So there's a couple things. We have kind of what we call our qualitative data and our quantitative data. So we've been gathering quantitative data for about 12 years now. And what that is, students take a variety of surveys on a monthly basis that really measures their overall health, how they feel about, their depression, anxiety. And so we have all this information and we can really say, this is how long it takes to get your scores into the healthy range, right? We know there's like a cutoff of, if you meet this cutoff, you're in the healthy range of, everyday person, this is what they would report, right? And so we can really look at that over the course of treatment and be able to see progress actually in black and white in front of us. And then we obviously have all of our qualitative to, maybe kind of validate some of the quantitative data that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so with that, we really can look at, okay, are our students in the healthy range? We want them to be in that range, or at least have, a certain amount of kind of improvement overall to know that they're going to be able to successfully leave Sunrise and not need a higher level of care.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
I would maybe, Craig, maybe you can refer to how can you tell it just by, observing the student and maybe regarding her strengths or personality or the background or the kind of struggle that she deals with.
So tell me the whole question again, because I've gotten lost in a lot of stuff.
How can you tell
Yeah.
when someone has good chances to rehabilitate her life?
So I guess looking at it from like when a girl is referred to Sunrise, right? And being able to look at it and say, are we able to help her? And is there a possibility that this is going to work for her? And so a lot of it goes into looking at her history and looking at just how complex is everything and what has taken place throughout her lifetime and how has she dealt with it. And you're looking for those times and places that you're talking about, like, are her strengths still supporting her in some way? And can she call on them in some way? They may not be functioning super well, but she can utilize them and use them in some way to kind of keep moving forward and keep trying. Or have like behaviors gotten so bad and so difficult for her that now we're falling into even worse kind of complex behaviors. So like you start adding on, like now there's eating disorder behavior on top of self-harm. And now there's relationship behavior where she's shutting down relationships and withdrawing all the time, or just looking at all these small pieces. And then a lot of time, like, it's just, I don't know a better way than to say just instinct over time too, has been able to be like, I've worked with so many kids through so many different environments, and being able to just kind of like know from the way that you feel and the way they engage with you and the way that they talk to you, what actually is going to serve them and what is not going to serve them. Yeah. And it's sad sometimes when I do see girls that they've kind of gone too far down this other path. Like really they start to shift towards criminality and towards other behaviors like that. And then they're beyond kind of DBT and Sunrise's help in that case. But I also like subscribe to just that everybody kind of has this innate ability to kind of keep moving forward, and we were born with that, and we were created to connect with one another, and you can find the environment and the connection and the way to do that. It's just it's hard to kind of always find that, but there are ways to do it, and being able to co-regulate and being able to connect and do relationships in a healthy kind of way. Yeah.
I would add too, another kind of thing we look at is really, if a student's engaging in a behavior that is not effective, or it's life interfering or therapy interfering, it's not that behavior doesn't just stop. What happens is there's more time in between, and the recovery is quicker, and the ability the ability to repair, and the ability to like quickly say, like I had a student, she went on a home visit and she had a pretty extensive self-harm episode, and it was months since she had self-harmed, and it was kind of like it turned into this whole crisis for the family. They ended up in the ER, and she sat there and she was like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. I don't need to do that anymore. I can do something different. And her ability to do that and recognize that so quickly, like that really is a measure of success, right? Because we're going to mess up. That's just our nature. But how quickly can we recover, and we can have insight into our behaviors, and then we can do something different next time. So I think that's a great way to kind of measure, like, is this going to be lasting success? And and not to go into crisis if there is a lapse or a relapse. It's really like, how are we learning and overcoming and repairing is what's more important.
How do we deal with it, not avoiding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess one other thing I would add is just things I've learned too, just over the years, is just we provide the healthy relationship, we provide the example. They start to learn to know what that feels like and recognize that. It doesn't mean they always leave here and go straight towards that. But they do know what it felt like, and they have had that experience now, and it will resurface at some point for them in their life, because now they've had the experience and they've had the opportunity, and they may go right back. I've seen girls go right back to some of the stuff when they go home, and they fall back in those relationships, and now they have something to contrast it against. It doesn't have to feel this way. It doesn't have to be like this. Yeah. And I know that there's a place and a way, and I felt that before. And so those are the ones that kind of have to crawl their way back out again. But I love, that's one of my most rewarding times too, is seeing that process happen for them, of that we did everything that we could. We tried as hard as we could with you, and they put in a lot of effort, and sometimes those behaviors and the draw of some of that is too strong. And so they go back to it, and then they learn a harder way, but it eventually resurfaces in a lot of ways for them.
Yeah. I think that's a tough question, because every individual person's so unique and their environment is so unique. So there's not like one formula for success. So I really like what was talked about. It's like longer times between, a quicker turnaround, being able to have healthier relationships, being more functional in the world, right? And I think learning is really what it's about. How do we teach and have our clients learn to have these healthier way of living? And when I hear about students struggling right after Sunrise, or maybe a month or two down the road, it's sometimes hard to hear, but I just keep in mind, like, this isn't the end of their story. Right? Like, we're still in the middle, even though it's like after Sunrise, right? And we've heard, I've heard, time and time again about a girl who leaves, who falls back into substances or falls back into self-harm or this. And then, more time goes by, and it's like, oh, they're actually doing really well now. And they figured it out. And, it's like, I kind of compare our level system at Sunrise. We have, different levels to keep our students motivated, and different privileges at each level. And it's like a video game. You're like leveling up. And once you leave Sunrise, it's like you're even further leveled up, and it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. And so it makes sense that they continue to struggle and make mistakes. But they now have like all the tools to figure out how do I deal with this mistake that I've made, and not have it just more and more, dig myself into a deeper and deeper pit.
Yeah.
So I want to ask something before we go into examples, because what you said now is very interesting, and I would like to hear like specific stories or memories that you have, or experiences with certain student or family, or something that you felt here. But I can't do it before asking about the financial aspect, because it's not cheap to come to Sunrise and to be able to give your daughter this kind of treatment, which sounds perfect and very holistic. So what is the profile of a family that does it? I mean, is it only for economical class which is high that can afford it, or when you struggle with such a challenge, you do everything and your daughter is here? So what is the profile of the families who come here?
I guess I would say just we get a whole kind of gamut of things. Like, we have families that have sold their houses and live in a tent, or go live with friends, or like they'll do anything to kind of help them and sacrifice whatever they need to kind of make it happen. And we have families that are affluent and have a lot more money and a lot more resources than other families. And the thing that I always just keep in mind is that the money is really you're paying for so many people and so many things, like they just don't exist at like an outpatient level, or even a day treatment level, of just 24/7 care with professionals who are trained, all that kind of stuff. It covers so much. And we're always mindful of it, and we want to make it stretch as far as we can for everybody, and we want to help everybody that we can. And unfortunately, just cost is a part of everything that we do.
Because it includes everything, and maybe also because of the professionality of the stuff.
So the amount of training that we even just the therapists receive and the mentors receive, everybody receives so much of that, because we don't want it to just be daycare or something like that. It really does have to fall along clinical guidelines and methods and things like that. So, and Amanda can say more because I don't deal with finances. So
no, I would say, most of our families, there's some level of sacrifice. It's not just, I have this extra money. I've seen families really have other children with special needs, and they're really juggling a lot. Or they're asking family, or they're pulling from their retirement or their, college fund. So you get kind of a variety of different, situations. And, that's kind of the sad part of the reality of long-term treatment, is how accessible is it to
maybe it's also
most families.
Maybe it tells a sad story about mental health system in general.
Yes, exactly. And that's really even for a long-term treatment center to be in network with any insurance provider is incredibly rare. But how do we, in the future, that's definitely a goal. How do we help get financial support for more families? And the reality is we're just not there, and there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. Yeah.
So let's finish our talk with really special memories or experiences individually that you have during those years. Something that just comes up to you that was significant for you. I'm sure that every day is significant, but still, I think that maybe there are experiences that stay with you longer.
I can start, and everybody's heard my stories more, I think. But I had a student, and she was adopted at the age of 4, and she had a lot of early childhood experiences, and she stayed here for 2 years, and treatment took a lot longer because we were trying to undo a lot of things from back then. But so we'd done a lot of trauma work, we'd done a lot of relationship work, and we'd worked really hard. And she wanted to go back and visit. So we do home visits. And so I'd gone home with the family to where they lived. And she wanted to go back and see where she had grown up, that she remembered from age 4.5 down. And so parents knew where the house was. We drove to it, and we're pulling up, and we're getting out of the cars, and she is at the front door knocking on the door. I had only planned as far as let's go sit outside the house and look at it, and let's talk about what it was like there. But she just went to the door and knocked on it and said to the people, "Hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm here with my parents and my therapist, and we're doing this. And I used to live here, and I'd like to, if you're okay, come in and look at the house." And the people said, "We know exactly who you are. We remember you and your brothers when you grew up here. We lived next door to you, and we moved in when your mom moved out." And they said, "Absolutely, you can come in." And they let us walk through the house. And it was just a life-changing experience for her, for me to be able to be a part of it. But and I'll get to more of the details, but just going through each room, and her memory of the house was how big it was, and that it was huge, and how scary, and those kinds of things. And now she's like, "My house was teeny, and there was no room anywhere." And we went through, and she just was able to kind of share with her parents and with me of here's where my brother's room was, and here's where my mom's room was, and here's my room was actually the laundry room, and I slept on a pile of laundry. Unless my mom was letting me sleep with her that night. And then she kind of talked about here's where some trauma happened and things like that. But, and then she started to remember positive things that had taken place from then on, because to that point, it was all negative. Yeah. And so she remembered the little old lady that actually was the only person to buy her a birthday present when she turned 4 years old. And she wanted to go next door and talk to that lady. And so it just started us on this whole journey that we did not plan or wouldn't have happened otherwise. But we went next door, and the old lady was in hospice, and her husband had just died. And so they didn't answer the door. We knocked, but So she wrote her a letter and just said, I don't know if you know how much that meant to me or what that was like for me to get that present, but it's one of the things that, sorry, I can't tell the story that correct, but just what it was like for me to kind of feel that love, at least from somebody back in my life. And then she wanted to go to her preschool and see her preschool teachers and remember them. And so we went to go try and find them, and they weren't there, but they knew where they were. So she wrote them letters and told them how great she was for them, for somebody taking care of her when she was 4 years old. Sorry.
We're all like that now.
But just having the and every home visit that I go on, where I go home with the family, I've had opportunities like that before, of just things that have come up that we couldn't have planned, that we got to experience, that change everything, really. So, and that's my most favorite one, honestly. But
I can imagine.
And I see that family every time I go back to the area.
Oh, wow.
So
it's a huge story.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about, so many, and there's so many I've been here 5.5 years, but one comes to mind because I just recently reconnected with her, and she's been out of Sunrise probably 2 or 3 years at this point, and she, so she came to Sunrise. She had a lot of the typical things that we see, like the depression, anxiety, self-harming, suicide attempts, and her family, her parents were divorced, it was a really hard divorce, especially on her, but the whole family really. And in her time at Sunrise, we would do family therapy every other week. So one session with dad, one session with mom, and back and forth. And we also did a clinical home visit, and it went terrible. It was the opposite of what Craig talked about, right? Like the time with her dad, was actually just really painful for her. He really didn't understand some of the things that she was trying to tell him. And she probably wasn't in the best mental place when we actually came to the home visit. And at the end of the home visit, she actually had another attempt. And I just remember getting off the plane, and because I know I flew home, she flew home the same day, but she was a few hours behind me, and getting all these messages. And it's like, just how terrible and awful that was. And I was here when she came back to Sunrise, flew back with her mom, and greeted her in the lobby right out there. And, how do you come back from that?
Yeah.
And she was able to work really, really hard. She graduated the program. She left, and she was one of our students that, made mistakes almost right away, right?
Finished with this part.
Right. Not as far as safety stuff, but, other areas. And I worked with her for a while in aftercare, and she started to be more functional and get her daily life moving, got a job. And so we gradually kind of decreased our time together, and kind of just, we didn't have an official goodbye necessarily. It was just like
needed.
Right. It was just like a less and less and less time together. And then she reached out to me. It's been years since we've done aftercare. I've had contact, and she called me because she had some questions about something, but we got to catch up. And she's like, I'm in college, and I'm doing awesome in college, and I'm dating this guy. And she always struggled with relationships, always. And I'm dating this guy, and he's wonderful to me, and he was in the car with her, and I got to meet him. Wow. And then I just barely saw on her social media that she's engaged. And I'm just so happy that she was able to see like her worth and her value, and be able to find someone that was going to treat her well, because her pattern was that she would find people who would not treat her well. And so that one just like sticks with me, because it's a longer lens of not just like what happened at Sunrise, but that it's, it's the long game, right? Yes. And I'm sure that her life's not perfect, and, there's going to be things that are tough, but it's just, she's so functional, and she's living a life worth living.
Yeah. Maybe she feels that she deserves it.
Yeah. You could see it. And she was like radiating. She was so happy. Like, I met him, and like, he's so wonderful to me, and he treats me right. And we're able to talk about all this stuff, and we make dinners together, and you could tell she was
miracles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, you could tell she was just so happy.
Yeah.
And that's, just thinking back to the time where I greeted her in the lobby, and she was at her low, and just like then seeing her like just at her high, just being so happy, like it was incredible.
We're just all going to cry here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ivory.
This is such a hard question because it's, I don't know, every student family that comes through these doors, I think, to have the opportunity to be part of that process of healing is just one of the greatest privileges. And to, you know, sit in pain, in a student's pain with them, is, there's just nothing like it, to be sitting in that pain with them and then to see them thrive. And I remember, like, the student that comes to my mind was one that was just in a lot of pain during her time at Sunrise. And she really struggled with relationships. Like, she would fight every staff, like, just very willful, really stuck in her ways. And is like just that validation. I remember just sitting with her. She was in her room laying on her bed crying, and I just went and sat on the floor with her. And I just sat with her, and I didn't say a word. I didn't say, you need to fix this or change it. And she, you know, probably about half an hour, she just kind of sat up and she just started to pour out what was going on inside of her. And I think there was kind of this moment for her where she chose to open up. Yeah. And it kind of, from, I don't know, it was necessarily that instance, but it was just like, it was kind of a point where she was ready to share what was happening inside of herself and let herself be vulnerable and be open.
And felt she could trust you.
Yeah. And it wasn't just me. It flowed, you know, it was like, it started to show up in just so many ways. And it was like, you see these kids like coming at their lowest lows, and they turn it, like, this girl turned into an incredible leader in her community. And we called her like the little staff, like, because she would go around telling them, you know, but she just had that in her. She had that leadership in her. She had that confidence in her. She was vulnerable with the other students, like such a great influence over her community. And it was almost like she had that light bulb moment. That's really which isn't always the case, but for her, it really was. And same, like, I got to see her, I'm still in touch with her, and she's in college, and she's, like, doing life, and I hear from her maybe once a year.
Wow.
And she's just thriving, and it wasn't easy after Sunrise. She actually didn't go home. She went to, like, a boarding school. Just home wasn't the best for her, and so she had to be independent from a very young age, but she didn't have any, I mean, I know she had some lapses, but she never had to go back to the hospital or anything like that. So, it's like, that's a story that I would say is 10 girls. That's their story, right? Like, and so it's just to be part of that process is incredible.
Yeah, and what I hear is that there is still connection, and they update you, and it's like really an ongoing experience. I deeply thank you all for this conversation and for everything you do. Really, I hope there will be more places like that. And thank you for the hope you gave. Thank you.
Thank you. These are awesome.